The test is in 4 parts, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a woman calling an animal park to inquire about a job. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Pinder's Animal Park, hello.
Oh, hello. I'm ringing to ask whether you have any jobs available.
What sort of work are you looking for? Is that permanent or part-time or...
Actually, I'm just looking for temporary work. I'm a student.
Oh, right. I'll just get a form and ask you a few questions. Then I'll pass your application on to our recruitment section. Is that okay?
Fine, thank you.
So, starting with your name.
It's Jane Lammerton.
Is that Lammerton?
There's only one M in it.
Oh, right. And your address?
It's 42 West Lane.
Right. And is that in Exeter?
Yes.
Okay. And can you give me your mobile phone number?
07792 430 921.
Right. Now, the next thing is, when are you available to start work?
I finish college on the 8th of June. That's in 3 weeks' time. But I can't start work till the 11th because I've got a hospital appointment on the 10th of June.
No problem. Now, I need to ask you a few questions about the type of job that might be suitable. Do you have any particular kind of work in mind? It doesn't necessarily mean that you will get work in the field that you want, but I can record your preferences.
Well, I'd do anything. And I have worked as an assistant animal keeper before, when I was still at school. But I'm studying at a catering college now, and I'd really like to get some experience as an assistant cook if possible.
Right. So that's your first choice. Have you done that kind of job before?
No, but I've helped my aunt sometimes. She runs a cafe in Exeter.
Would you say you've got any relevant skills then?
Well, I'm used to using the kind of equipment you usually find in a kitchen.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Okay. And I know you're still studying, but do you already have any qualifications related to that kind of work? A hygiene qualification, for example?
I haven't, no. But I've got a certificate in food handling. I did it before I decided to become a full-time student.
Fine. Okay. That means you wouldn't need any specific training if you did get the kind of work you wanted. But you'd have to do a short course on first aid. All our new employees do that. It just takes half a day, and most people find it generally useful.
Oh, yes, I'm sure it is.
Well, that's about it, really. Just one last thing. Can you give me the name of someone who would give you a reference, like a previous employer or...
Oh, yes. You can put Dr. Ruth Price.
Okay. Is that one of your college lecturers?
She's my college tutor. She's known me for over 2 years, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind. In fact, she's given me a reference before.
Fine. We'd probably contact her by phone. Do you happen to know her number?
I've got it on my phone, yes. It's 0208 685 114. That's a landline.
Good. Well, as I say, I can't promise anything, but I'll pass your application on, and you should hear in a few days. Is there anything else?
Just one thing. I suffer from a particular type of colour blindness, and sometimes employers have to make special arrangements for that.
OK, I'll make a note of that. It won't be good that you've made us aware of it. You can provide us with more details if you're offered a job.
OK. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear 2 engineering students, a woman in her 6th year called Linda and a man in his 5th year called Matthew, discussing the benefits of student work placements.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hi, Linda. Can you spare a few minutes?
Hello, Matthew. No problem.
I just wanted to talk to you about temporary work placements. I've never really thought there was a good reason for doing one. I've got some savings, so I don't really need the money at the moment. But I've had an email from the university about a vacancy that looks quite interesting. You did a placement last year, didn't you?
I did, yes. In my case, I wanted to find out if I was making the right career choice before I began applying for permanent jobs. I thought I wanted to work in car manufacturing, but I wasn't sure, so I applied to Toyota.
What was the application process like?
Lengthy. There were a lot of different parts to it. The dullest one was a psychometric test. You know, when you have to answer loads of questions about yourself.
And you're trying to guess what's the best thing to say.
Yes. Then there was an activity that we did in groups, which I found really fascinating. Engineers are renowned for being a bit unsociable, but I thought we made a great team. And we had an individual task too. We had to sort through various business documents and prioritize them. It was just like what you have to do as a student, really, just with different content.
What exactly were you doing on the placement?
I was helping to design some diagnostic software to identify any waste in the car assembly process.
Do you mean waste of materials?
No, time. Anything that can speed the process up helps to cut costs.
How did the work placement compare to being a student? Was it hard work?
Yes, it was. I'd had full-time work before. I've done various unskilled jobs during university holidays, and some of those involve long hours. So I thought I'd find it easy. I was wrong, though. I think when you're on placement, you're always trying to prove yourself.
So you push yourself hard to succeed?
Yes. But I got a lot of support from my employers. They were always helpful. And then, at the end of the placement, I was given formal feedback.
Do you mean on your engineering ability?
Well, no. I didn't really need that because we had team meetings every other day. and so I had the chance to discuss technical issues and ask about anything that wasn't clear. The evaluation was about general workplace things, like organizational ability, initiative, that sort of thing.
I get the impression you think you benefited from the placement.
Well, the best thing is that they've offered me a job for next year. Depending on my exam results, of course, but still.
A permanent one?
Yes. But apart from that, I learned so much. The industrial environment was much more demanding than the academic one, so my general skills improved, like time management, meeting deadlines. And on the technical side, I learned new software packages, like MS Project.
Well, I think you've convinced me that work placements are worthwhile, but while you're here, can you give me advice on something else?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
I'm about to make a start on the engineering materials module, and I've got a book list here. Can you have a quick look and tell me what you would recommend? That's if you can remember.
Let's see. I do remember some of them. Yes, this one, The Science of Materials. I found the subject quite hard generally, but this book is very accessible, so it suited me. It doesn't cover everything, though.
What about this one then, Materials Engineering?
Oh, yes, I do remember that. But it's a bit out of date now, isn't it? Unless it's a new edition.
I don't think so.
But what I liked about it were the pictures. They really helped to understand the descriptions. It's useful just from that point of view. Let's see, what else? Oh, yes, that one there, Engineering Basics. I think out of all these, that's got the widest coverage.
But I've looked at the contents page and it hardly mentions nanotechnology.
Yes, you're right. The Evolution of Materials does, though. It's a recent publication, so it covers all the latest developments. It's a bit thin on the 1960s, though, and that decade was quite important.
Well, it sounds as if they all complement each other in some ways. I don't suppose you can lend me...
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3.
You'll hear an introduction about the process of producing stamps.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Tell Me More, the programme where you ask the questions and we provide the answers. And we've had a wide variety of questions from you this week. And the subject we've picked for you this week, in response to your many letters, is the production of postage stamps. And as usual, we've been doing our homework on the subject. So, who designs the postage stamps that we stick on our letters? Well, in Australia, the design of postage is in the hands of Australia Post. In Britain, it's the Royal Mail that looks after stamps, and it seems that both countries have a similar approach to the production process. We discovered, to our surprise, that it can take up to 2 years to produce a new postage stamp. Why is that, I hear you ask? Surprisingly, it can't be all that difficult to design a stamp. In fact, it isn't, but it seems it's a lengthy business. Firstly, they have to choose the subjects, and this is done with the help of market research. Members of the general public, including families, are surveyed to find out what sorts of things they would like to see on their stamps. They are given a list of possible topics and asked to rank them. A list is then presented to the advisory committee, which meets about once a month. The committee is made up of outside designers, graphic artists, and stamp collectors. If the committee likes the list, it sends it up to the board of directors, which makes the final decision. Then they commission an artist. In Australia, artists are paid $1,500 for a stamp design and a further $800 if the committee actually decides to use the design.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
So there's a possibility that a stamp might be designed, but still never actually go into circulation. So what kind of topics are acceptable? Well, the most important thing is that they must be of national interest. And because a stamp needs to represent the country in some way, characters from books are popular, or you often find national animals and birds. So, of course, the kangaroo is a favourite in Australia. With the notable exception of members of the British royal family stamps, no living people ever appear on Australian or British stamps. Every year, the Royal Mail in Britain receives about 2,000 ideas for stamps, but very few of them are ever used. One favourite topic is kings and queens. For instance, King Henry VIII, famous for his 6 wives, has recently appeared on a British stamp together with a stamp featuring each of his wives. But despite the extensive research which is done before a stamp is produced, it seems it's hard to please everybody. And apparently all sorts of people write to the post office to say that they loved or hated a particular series. The stamp to cause the most concern ever in Australia was a picture of Father Christmas surfing at the beach. And when you consider that the practical function of a stamp is only as a receipt for postage, I think perhaps the importance accorded to stamps has got out of all proportion. Well, that's all for today. If there's a subject you want us to tell you more about, drop us a line at...
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4. Listen to the introduction about Tower Bridge and complete the summary.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Tower Bridge is located in one of the most interesting parts of London. On either top of the tower, you can get a bird's-eye view of the wonderful scenery all round Tower Bridge. On its south side are many tall old buildings. On its north side stands the Tower of London itself. But Tower Bridge, the first bridge over the Thames, as you travel to London from the sea, is the most famous of them all. Although they look the same age, the tower is almost 1,000 years old, and Tower Bridge, which was built in the 1890s, is just over 100. Because of the tall ships up and down the Thames, it was proposed in 1850 that a bridge across the Thames near the tower was most necessary. However, the designers argued about the new bridge for about 30 years. They took so long because they had two big problems. One is that the new bridge must look like the old tower, and the other is that the bridge must not look like a modern bridge. They made it look like the old tower, so everyone was happy. Besides, the most surprising thing about Tower Bridge is that it opens in the middle, while big ships are going through to the Pool of London. If you're lucky enough to see the bridge with its two opening arms high in the air, you'll never forget it. The bridge took 8 years to build and cost £900,000, a lot of money in those days. But it was a wonderful success and became a famous tourist attraction in London on the day when the bridge was completed. 100 years ago, the Thames was once London's busiest traffic route, so that the bridge opened at least 12 times a day. Today, big ships don't go so far up the Thames. Tower Bridge opens perhaps only twice a week, but the same wonderful machinery is still in good condition. Green, yellow and red, the colourful wheels and engines look smart and new, not 100 years old. They still lift the two heavy opening arms, each 1,000 tons, leaving 70 metres for the ships to go through. And they still can open and close the bridge in 1.5 minutes. Things are changing greatly now at Tower Bridge. The horses that used to help with pulling have gone, and so have the tugs, for they're no longer necessary. The walkways from one tower to the other at the top of the bridge were closed years ago because so many people jumped off them into the Thames, which is said to open again soon. In addition, the beautiful wheels will be part of a special exhibition for the public to visit. There'll be a restaurant in one of the towers and a pub in the other. But whatever happens in its exciting future, Tower Bridge will always mean London.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.